Hello guys, I wanted to take a moment today, we're going to spend some time on this Instagram Live / Facebook Live to talk about a trust post that I made probably almost 3 weeks ago now. I made a couple of them I think, or maybe just one. But you guys had a lot of questions and things you were pushing back on which are appropriate and welcomed, and I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to be able to have a dialogue with you about what I had said, because I didn't say a ton. Hello, let's go. Hey Andrew. Hey Jamie, welcome. I wanted to be able to extrapolate on some of that stuff so that you guys could ask questions on this and also just have a chance for us to connect on it. Facebook, is it going or?
We're just checking.
Do you want me to stream from here? Nope. Nope, alright. Hello Michael. Anyway, so you guys, if you want to go to my my Instagram account or Facebook, whichever. Where's my phone? I want to pull up the actual post so that I can go along with you. Oh, I'm leaving the frame. Do we love that? All right. I'm going to read the actual post to you guys so you have something to reference. I'll even show you the picture. We got like a whole, maybe I should show you. Well, we're live on Facebook too. That's great. All right. So I should show you guys this whole operation. This is hilarious. Let me pull up the picture so you guys can kind of reference from your own memory of this experience what I'm talking about. If I knew how to not be looking at things I'm tagged in. Alright. Trust. Oh, so the actual post said, "You are not for sale and you don't barter intimacy as currency." It looked like this. Okay, that was the post. It looked like this. And then in the caption below, I put in quotes, "You broke my trust. You have to regain my trust. You need to build trust with me." I put those in air quotes, and I said, "These statements are all based on a broken system, a system where we leverage intimacy and vulnerability to exact performance from our relationships so they conform to our expectations. This is manipulation, fear, and control, not trust. Trust is a byproduct and attribute of the presence of love in our lives. We don't punish or reward people with the currency of trust in our lives based on their performance. Your intimacy is not for sale. Freely you have received, freely you give." Or freely give. And I threw that last thing in there as just a gratuitous, scriptural quote. It's not necessarily relevant to that subject, but that was the quote. And then I got a lot of questions. I actually compiled a document, you guys. I went through the comments on Facebook and on Instagram and just kind of compiled a general, pushback on it, because I know that this is such a hot topic for people. Let me say something from the onset of this conversation before we get into the details. For those of you live streaming and those of you watching this later, the subject of trust in our culture, especially in the American Christian church, probably other cultures also, is there is a stronghold around this idea. So there's a very popular book that came out years ago called Boundaries by Charles Townsend and Henry Cloud, which I love, by the way. That book is incredible. It changed my life. I got tools and language to really help set me up for success in how I brokered and managed intimacy in my life and my relationships. So I am not knocking their work by any means. I love what those guys are doing, and I love the language they put into that stuff. I love how empowered people are from their content. But on the subject of boundaries, there is an empowering element to this that are pushing people for various reasons to places where they start putting love and trust and intimacy into boxes that those things do not belong in, that they don't fit into. And so I think I want to throw a commentary on this in a conversation that we're having about trust that I would like to kind of change in the way that we practice and relate to this idea, because it does kind of lead us to a road or a path that is not where God is. And it leads us to a place where we're controlling, we're divisive, we're separate from, we're self-protecting. That's not the nature of the Lord, right? That's not the nature of love. And so when you start throwing trust in that conversation and the result is separation, we're actually having a contradiction here, and we're starting to relabel practices of evil and putting good words on it, which is a terrifying prospect. We don't want to do that, all right? And so I'm not interested in fighting anybody. I'm not trying to necessarily convince you of anything. I would like to just kind of give you my opinion on this, and my opinion is pretty strong. I'm pretty persuaded about this because of things I've seen in my own personal life and what I've seen happen in the lives of people around me, especially people that I lead and have responsibility over. So my premise on this whole thing, like I have as my opinion on lots of things, is, and get ready because this is a major crux that I'm going to try and unpack for the rest of our time together right now. Trust is a spirit. And a lot of us like to treat trust like something that we have authority over, something that we are in control of, something that is our responsibility and something we get to manage. And I understand that that's how we think about it. Because of the way we've conceptualized it, it's just not complete. That idea, that relationship with the idea of trust is destructive. It leads us to places that are not awesome. And I want to throw another massive disclaimer in there before we get into this. There are some of you here, some of you watching, or people you know about this subject that are traumatized, that have been in abusive relationships or abusive homes or whatever. I am not talking to the fringe, exceptional experience on this subject. I'm speaking to the majority. So I'm not talking to people who are abuse victims. I'm not talking to people who are in like relationships where you don't understand how to say no to destructive patterns and behavior and people manipulating you or whatever. That is a different group of people that I would address separately. I don't know that I plan to. Maybe at some point I might. But understand, in this conversation, I am not talking to the extreme cases and the exceptions. And a lot of you are going to, your natural inclination is going to want to try and fight me on what I'm about to tell you and find exceptions to justify your rebuttal. What I want to throw in there as something for you to be mindful of when we talk about the subject of discerning the Spirit is pay attention to what happens inside of you as we talk about this subject. Is there like this violent aggressor in you that wants to fight me and that wants to shut me out or prove me wrong or discredit me in order to keep your kingdom the way that it is? Is that happening? And if it is, and if you can notice and catch that, is that thing fighting me good? Is it coming from a place of hope, from a place of love? Or is it something else? Is the energy hot? Is it violent? Is it sharp? Is it cutting? Is it fearful? You know what I mean? Pay attention to the impulse that arises as we talk about this. Because I've found in my experience over the last several years of teaching stuff like this, there is a stronghold, at least in our country, on this subject where people feel very controlling and dominant and aggressive and territorial about this subject. I am not interested in ruining anybody's life. I'm not trying to fight about this. I'm not trying to make you miserable. What I do want to do, though, is poke at and propose that maybe love is bigger than you think. Maybe God is more pervasive, more powerful, and more supportive than you're comfortable with. And maybe there's a depth of our intimacy and our relationship with Him and our ability to cooperate with who He is in our world that's actually more refined than what we're used to on a regular basis. Maybe. All right? So on the prospect of trust being a spirit, one thing you want to recognize, and if you want to look at Scripture, let's go to 1 Corinthians 13:7. Love always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres, love never fails. You guys, there is a line in there that says that love always trusts. And a lot of us read that and we explain it away. That's not true. Here's what the author actually means. Here's what Paul was actually talking about. Here are all the exceptions that don't apply to what Paul's talking about when he describes the nature of love. And what I'd like to propose is, oftentimes the thing going to work to try and find backdoors and excuses out of this idea is not love, is not truth, it's justification, it's fear, it's compromise. And if that's what you're using to dictate what's right and good in your life, you're already in a fake world. You're living in a delusional place where you don't get to connect with the Lord on this subject. You consult your own humanistic wisdom. You consult your culture. You consult human practice. I'd like to propose there's better for you than that. I'd like to propose that love is deeper and more profound than that. And you are way more empowered and equipped to engage in painful, devastating, confusing, awkward, rough aspects of relationship. God has covered it and empowered you, and you have everything you need to not just succeed, but to thrive in this place, all right? And so when we talk about trust, what we want to understand is trust is like love, is not something that we have authority over. But we like to think about having, that it's in our ability and within our control to manage because it makes us feel safe, but that's a false sense of security, okay? Trust, like love, has authority over us. It is a nature of the Lord. It is not an option on a menu. Trust is the way that God is. It's not something that He tries to do or chooses to flirt with. It's an expression of His nature. It's who He is. And so when we say yes to God, trust is a natural byproduct of that intimacy and does display itself in our relationships, in our choices. And I know right now already some of those defense mechanisms are already firing off. You're already starting to harden and disconnect and protect yourself from what I'm saying. Here's the thing though, you guys, I'm not your enemy. I'm not the guy you need to protect yourself from. The enemy is probably within. The thing that's already putting the walls up, you want to recognize that's the participation of the enemy in your life, not my voice. not this idea. I'm not telling you anything that's unbiblical. This is in Scripture. This is demonstrated by Jesus, not just in how he lived, but also how he taught. Paul was very intentional about instructing us to be submissive and peaceable and open to reason, that wisdom functions in this way, and that love is trusting in nature. Okay? And so, I get that you have all these things that come up, where there are variables, there are exceptions, there are things that are awkward and strained and bizarre, and yes, there are things to navigate in that space, but what I'm saying still flies free and true in those exceptions as well, and we're going to get into that. Alright, by the way, if you have questions as we're going, or things you want to throw in there, feel free to represent yourself on the feed. I have some questions I'm going to be bringing up from the post, the original post, that we'll go into as well, but I just want to unpack some of this stuff, you guys. Alright, so trust is not something that we have control over. It is a result, and it is a symptom of the nature of the Lord expressing itself in our lives. So I'd like to use this analogy to give people just like a visual aid and some concept for this. I want you to imagine trust flowing out of heaven as this excessive, incessant, thick waterfall of honey, just flowing out of heaven, dumping into earth, like just cascading down and spilling over everything, covering all of this, like thickly, with this trusting nature, okay? Imagine that as the setup. And then somewhere along the way, it became a good idea, it became a practice and something that was celebrated for people to build cisterns around the area where trust was flowing into their world, and they built a dam and a cistern around it, and they froze it and it hardened, and then so the trust started to build up and coagulate and harden. And then they started chipping away little hard pieces of their hard trust, what's the word, storage? That's not the word I wanted. Their pile of trust, if you will, that's just become like crusty and hard. They chip it off, and then they wrap it up in like these little wrappers, and they write their name on it, right? And they have these candies that they put in their basket, and then they go into town. And they have this basket of trust that they then give away to all the people in town who do things that they like, who perform and behave in accordance to their judgment and their expectation and their desire. All the people that did what they wanted and that were lined up with how they expected things to go, they gave candy to. The people who didn't do what they wanted, who violated their expectations or requirements or hopes for what should take place, they withheld the candy and they didn't give it away because they wanted to punish those people. They wanted to train those people to shift the way that they participated with them in the world. Here's the problem. When we withhold like that in order to change the result or the performance or the behavior of somebody else, there is a spirit in the world that functions that way, and it is not love. The spirit that functions like that, the pattern that that's after, is actually called manipulation. Which might sound extreme to some of us, but that's absolutely the case. It is the nature of that spirit. We've got a comment here. This is the message that set me free from 14 years of insomnia. Amazing what happens when you align your belief system with truth. Thank you, Otsko. That's awesome. I love that. Jamie says, oof, wow, sounds like manipulation. Right. And so you guys, manipulation is not coming from the heart of God. He's not like that. He doesn't do that. He doesn't function that way. So when we start patterning ourselves after evil manipulation, we start learning how to steward our resources according to how evil would steward that stuff. You start inviting the devourer into your life. You start to allow the decay from the inside out to already start to take place in your life. And so somewhere along the way, we decided the cistern, chip off, wrap it candy distribution process to be a healthy, mature way that we demonstrate trust in our world, because there's all these variables and all this chaos out there that we have to manage. The problem, one of the biggest problems that I see with this practice is it's absolutely untrusting of the Holy Spirit and taking matters into our own hands, and us learning then how to judiciously award or punish behavior and choices of those around us. Love no longer gets to flow freely from our hearts, from the heart of the Lord, through us as conduits into the world that we live in. It becomes this thing that we then kind of urinate all over and mark as our territory, and then redistribute according to our standards and our judgments and the way we think things should go. Awful. That's called disobedience. It's called rebellion. It's idolatrous to function this way. It's evil. So I'm not trying to ruin your life. I would like you to wake up to, and again, I understand that not everyone that's watching this or that will see this is going to like what I'm saying. And you guys are going to fight me, and that's okay. I don't need to be right about this. I'm going to continue to follow the Lord the way He's taught me to, and you can choose to keep doing the other thing. That's okay. But I am saying, though, that when we don't allow the Lord to be the one to inspire and release this through us, we are doing something other than obedience. Audrey says, this is so good. Aligning with truth. This is so understandable and freeing. Wow, thanks, Mike. You're welcome. I'm glad that it's understandable. That's awesome. Okay, and the one thing you need to recognize, whether you're like celebrating this or like secretly like smoking your cigarette in the corner and being really upset about this, one thing you want to recognize in that process is pay attention to the energy that's like lighting you up. What is animating inside you? What's reacting to me? Is it you? Is it your personality? Is it your history? Or is there something else participating in your operating system that's being threatened, that's being opposed by what I'm saying, what I'm proposing, and wants to snuff me out, wants to discredit me, wants to disqualify what I'm saying? Pay attention to that for yourself. And I'm not saying that do it for me. I don't care if you like me or not. I don't care if you agree with me or not. My life's going to be amazing regardless of your opinion. I'm saying this for your benefit. Is there something in your operating system that is contrary to the nature of the Lord, that is manifesting in this conversation that you could then potentially disagree with, repent from, and step into a greater measure of freedom for your own life that I may never hear about? Like, is that opportunity in front of you? Is there an invitation for you in that? And if there is, can you see it? Do you have eyes to see? Could you receive that in your life? I hope that you do, that you could, because I know that your life will be so much better if you can embrace that. All right, Emmy says, I feel like so many Christians take on this false responsibility in their lives to manage themselves and others. Totally. You guys, the voice that tells you that it's your job to manage how other people respond to you, it's your job to manage how they treat you, what they do, how they handle what you gave them, that it's your job to do that stuff, again, that voice is not coming from the heart of the Lord. God doesn't even do that. And if he's all-powerful and the one who instituted all this, and he doesn't do that to people, why do you think it's a good idea for you to do that? He doesn't control anyone. God is the most offensively empowering person I have ever met. It is shocking. It's actually borderline irresponsible how empowering the Lord is. According to our judgment and our standards, when you watch how God empowers people and the way that he conducts himself in the world, God is crazy to us. He is dangerous. He is messy. He's irresponsible. We label and accuse this beautiful, perfect person according to our subpar standards of our best ability to decide what's right and wrong. And we condemn him for his nature and the way that he expresses himself and the way that he chooses to be vulnerable and to invite other people into that place with him. He does it with you. You've experienced him trusting you with things you didn't deserve to be trusted with. Am I right? You were given supernatural abilities. You were given relationships. You were given opportunities. You were given a body with breath and a brain and emotions and a sex drive and all these things that you didn't take care of, that you didn't do perfectly, that you didn't steward responsibly, and yet he gave it to you anyway. And he didn't punish you for that. He's not mad at you. In fact, before you ever made a mistake, he died so you wouldn't be punished for those mistakes. How responsible is that? How safe is that? And I'm saying when we judge the Lord, when we judge these decisions, we must submit that judgment to the nature of God, to truth, to wisdom, to how he would exercise jurisdiction over this stuff. Because if we exceed our reach beyond what the Lord would do, we are in some ugly territory, my friends. All right, let's check this out. Jamie says, I receive. He's touching my heart right now. Oh, that's awesome. Get it, Jamie. Take her out, Lord. Fire. Rapture. That's awesome. All right. So you guys, we want to be mindful, like exercise that self-awareness of recognizing what in us is celebrating what God's doing, what in us is opposed to what he's doing, and we want to let that thing die. We want to get rid of that thing in us that says no to God, that doesn't trust his nature, that chooses to bypass his choice in a matter, in a situation, in a relationship. And we want to learn how to survive his leading and his empowerment, to submit to that, to walk in obedience, to die to the things that would take us away from the way that he wants to demonstrate himself in our lives. And yes, that comes with sacrifice. It does. Yes, it will cost us. That's true. But if we're unwilling to even consider how he might go about responding to a situation or a circumstance, and we just take matters into our own hands and do the best we can with what we know, then the fruit of that is going to be subpar at best. And a lot of us are running around sick and anemic and weak because we don't actually let the Lord be our sustenance. We base it off of our judgment of what's right or wrong, what's helpful, what's not. We base it off of what we know. And we've actually been instructed to trust in God with our whole hearts and to not lean on what we know. what we understand, what we've figured out up to this point. But that in everything that we do, that we would acknowledge him, not what he's like, who he is, what he is doing now, and that he would actually then direct our path, that he would inspire and guide and lead us to expressing ourselves and responding to our environment. He actually does that. And the people who are able to partner with him in that place to get there in their friendship with him are the ones who are willing to let go of the control thing, who are willing to release people from their demands, from their punishment, from their manipulation, right? When we actually allow people to make choices that we don't like and we still show up with the Lord, we still say yes to love, it changes our lives. And then consequently releases grace to those around us. Ephesians 4:29, let no unwholesome talk or corrupt communication proceed from your mouth, except that which is good for edification, that it would benefit those who listen, or that it would administer grace unto the hearers. We are actually supposed to be conduits of something supernatural, something beyond what we could come up with. We're not just regurgitating what everyone else is doing. We are actually a source of something original and pure and righteous and holy and transformative. And that when we open our mouths, when we release our choices, when we demonstrate our agreement with what we know is right and good and true, it actually produces power for our environment and invites other people to get to step into something better than what they've ever known up to that point. And it's not because of us. It's because of the yes that we gave to the Lord that we learned how to walk in and how to say yes to, how to walk in obedience in, submitting to his nature, all right? So, let us talk about trust in relationships. So, you guys had some questions that I wanted to get into on this. One of the questions was, what about boundaries? How do boundaries fit in with this? And that is a great question, and we got to talk about it. You guys, and this is the heart of the authors of the book Boundaries. The whole point of a boundary is not to separate us from other people. It's not to protect us from other people's choices. The point of a boundary is to protect the connection that we do have with them, to preserve our relationship, to set the other person up for success to whatever degree they're actually capable of managing in their life, right? Unshakable Grace says it's such an invitation to others to receive. Absolutely. So you guys, boundaries are not there to protect us. They are there to support and uphold the connection that we do have with whomever we have boundaries with. And those boundaries are something that we're supposed to celebrate and embrace and exercise. And by the way, boundaries without consequences aren't boundaries. If you have a boundary with somebody and then you don't actually follow through with the consequence of that boundary being violated, it's not a real boundary. And the person receiving on the other side of that is confused and doesn't know how to participate and how to succeed. This person says, I think the more we learn to trust God, the more we let go of trying to control our lives and everyone around us. Absolutely. That's for sure a result of that. Yeah. All right, so I'm a huge fan of boundaries. I exercise boundaries on a regular basis. Anybody who knows me, who spends any significant amount of time with me, who works with me on any project, experiences boundaries from me almost immediately. It's a normal thing, and it's not because I'm paranoid and self-protecting and like wanting to control anybody else. It's because I'm so for who they are and what they get to have access to and how we get to partner together. I want there to be very clear communication on how do we move forward together, and I'll let them know what I celebrate and praise and what I'm opposed to and will not tolerate based on what I've said yes to, right? And so they're set up for success to understand what my end of that experience is going to be like, and then they get to decide, do they like where I'm coming from or do they not like it? Do they agree with me, do they disagree? I don't care, it's up to them, and then they get to choose how they want to respond. I'm not interested in making them turn into anything for me, making sure that they show up in a certain way in my relationship. They all have choices, and then I have choices in response to their behavior, to their participation, to their choices. Do you have any book recommendations on boundaries? Yeah, Boundaries by Charles Townsend and Henry Cloud. Like, that's probably the best book I've read on boundaries. I don't know that I can think of an even close second. All right. So let's say that, let's think of an example. Let's say somebody, let's say a friend of mine. Let's use a real example. Let's say a friend of mine likes to tap into a spirit of mockery. And being a feeler and someone who's discerning, when mockery shows up, it actually feels violating to me. It feels gross. I feel like something sludgy and nasty is on me. And I feel betrayed by my friend. I feel like they just like broke the rules on some level and like said yes to something that shouldn't be in our lives. And because of my friendship with them, I've submitted myself to their influence to whatever degree, and I'm vulnerable toward them when they're actual friends. I'm not talking about acquaintances. I'm talking about someone you're actually like, you know, moving toward in a relationship. When they choose evil, it's going to affect me because of the choice I made for them, right? And so in that context, if they open the window to smoke and nastiness to come into my home because I gave them a key to my house, right? All of a sudden their choices then start to negatively affect my state, my environment, that whole thing. And so at some point I had to pull up my friend aside and be like, hey dude, when you do this, and I was very explicit, when you say stuff like this to people, not these words, but from this spirit, when you like to exploit and focus on and accentuate people's like strangeness or things that, you know, we're kind of embarrassed by or like are awkward, and you blow it up and you like laugh about it, you get other people to laugh about it, the nature of that motivation is dark. It's evil. It does not feel good. It's violating. Not just for the person you're doing it to, and not just for the people who agree with you and who laugh, but for me as your friend, experiencing your choice in the matter. I feel violated by that choice. Not awesome. And it sucks for me. And so, I would love it if you could stop doing that. And you and I both, being followers of Jesus and loving people, recognize that mockery is not awesome for people. It's not something we should be touching. Right? And so we reason that together and they're like, yeah, totally, oh my gosh, you're right. Thanks for saying something. I can't believe that was happening. You're, oh. And then they tell me they want this to be different. And then we hang out like 3 days later, and we're in a group setting, and sure enough, they do the mockery thing again. They release that spirit into our environment, and they're doing the thing, and they're just going to town. And they're so used to it, they don't even think about jumping back into that flow. And I'm like, oh, it's happening again, and I feel angry again because they're doing something that we have already talked about shouldn't be happening. So I pull them aside later, and I'm like, hey dude, remember when we talked about this, and then tonight when this happened and you did this, you see that? Like, that's mockery. Do you understand? Like, oh my gosh, you're right, I get it. And let's say I keep coming back to them because they can't stop. Somewhere along the way, there's actually a threshold period of time that there's grace, it's covering them. At some point, they have a choice. And somewhere along the way, they might actually willfully decide changing their behavior is too expensive. It's too scary, it's too confusing, it's too much work, it's too whatever. And so then they decide, you know what? Giving up mockery, not worth it. And so then they keep demonstrating their agreement with mockery. In the spirit, you can feel the difference between ignorance and willful choice. There is a difference. And the person willfully choosing evil might not be conscious of that willful choice. It doesn't mean they're not willfully choosing it. And that's confusing for some people in a relationship. Oftentimes there are people who are willfully doing something and they're consciously not aware. They don't even feel in their conscience that there's a problem. And so when someone comes with feedback and demonstrates like, this sucks for me, this is not okay, this is ugly, this is bad, this is evil, and they can't connect to it because they're so blinded, it doesn't mean they're not accountable for that choice. So, boundary, I had already communicated this is a problem for me. I can't be in an environment where you're going to do this to people and be okay. Like, that's awful. So maybe it's the 7th time that we've talked about this. I pull them aside like, hey dude, because this literally happened to me. I had a friend who this exact situation was going on. The mockery thing, talked about it multiple times. They didn't stop. Like, weren't getting better. They just kept doing it. Finally, I pulled him aside like, dude, this is still happening. I don't want to keep being the guy who has to bring it up, but I don't want to feel this way. And I'm starting to feel like I don't want you around me anymore. I'm starting to feel like I don't want to find time in my schedule for you to be in my life because this thing keeps showing up and it's twisted and I can't be part of it. And I remember this was a defining moment in my life. We were at coffee, we were at Starbucks, I was telling him this whole thing and his response was, yeah dude, that sucks, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. And just kind of like jumped off the train. I was like, oh, I'm alone now. Like, now this is just my problem. This is Mike with his issue, and this guy doesn't actually recognize it as a problem. If he knew that it was a problem, his response would not be, sorry man, I don't know what to tell you. He would have actually like wanted to change it. And I was like, huh. And at that point in my life, I had to let him represent himself and not try and interpret him a certain way or change his response. I wanted where he actually was in our relationship and his priorities to be demonstrated in the light. So I let it happen, and I was like, huh. And the old me would have rushed to try and help him find a solution, convince him to change it, try and help him make a better choice. But at this point I was like, yeah, I'm done. Not because I've given up, but because I'm realizing he doesn't actually want this to be different. I think I'm working a little harder on this than I need to be. I'm doing more for this than he is, and this is his life. So I remember going like, huh, okay. And then I sat back, crossed my arms, and it means it just happened, and I was silent. And instead of rushing to and rescuing him from that moment, I just let it sit there. And it was awkward. And I used to spare people from their awkward responses all the time because I didn't want to just leave it in the air. But I was like, this is actually not my responsibility and I can't fix it. So I sat there and I said, well, that sucks. That's really disappointing. I'm sad to hear that. And I didn't rush to help him. He's like, what do you mean? And he reached over and grabbed my hand and I was like, dude, I don't know what to tell you. Like, this is not something I can fix. This is not something I can change. This is not something I'm responsible for. It just sucks to hear that's where you're at. He's like, oh, and then he all of a sudden like tried to change things. I'm like, yeah, it's okay. Hey, listen, I just want you to know, we got some comments. And so specific examples are always so helpful. I love this. Good. Yes, I agree, helpful example. Okay, good, I'm glad the example's helpful. So, I told him in this conversation, hey dude, I care about you, I believe in you, you know that I think you're amazing and that's all true about you. You still have a choice in how you want to conduct yourself. And clearly this is something that you don't seem to want to give up. And that's okay, I'm not here to be your mom, I'm not here to boss you around. I'm just here to represent my experience in this. If you don't want to change it, that's fine. I just want you to know, I'm probably not going to have a ton of space in my calendar to have you participate in things I'm doing anymore. Because I don't want to be part of this. I'm not saying this to punish you. I'm not mad. I'm not punishing. Like, that's actually not in my heart. I just care about me and what I'm doing and the people I'm responsible for more than I do enabling you to be dysfunctional in my space. Like, I'm just not going to put up with this anymore. And so if you're around and we see each other, like, I'm not mad. Like, I'm good. I just am probably not going to let this continue to influence my life. He's like, oh my gosh, it's so extreme. I'm like, sorry, I got to take care of myself. I got to take care of my life. You know what I mean? And you don't seem to want to care about this, and it's okay. And it was sad. And then I don't think we ever actually recovered from that. And then he moved away. We're still friends now. We still talk. But that was a boundary. And the consequence to that was, I'm not going to invite you to stuff anymore. I'm probably not going to come to your stuff anymore. I'm probably not going to, make time for us to connect because I don't want to keep experiencing this. And I'm sparing you guys from some pretty, ugly exchanges that I experienced with him in group settings where he was, just tearing people up. It was awful. And especially, how authoritative and charismatic this guy was. It was beautiful to watch him influence a room, and so to see him do that was so violating because it was such an extreme version of influence in people's lives. It was so sad. All right, so we hear some saying, so I think you can't set boundaries for other people until you don't define yourself and the truth you choose to align yourself to. So you always have to be very intentional, is that right? Yes, that's true. You cannot set boundaries with other people until you know where you are, where you want to be, where you are aligned with the Lord. So if you are compromised with mockery, you're probably not going to be able to call someone else on it. If you mock people, you're not going to have the clarity to get to call someone else on that stuff. So Jesus is talking about, before you help remove a speck out of your brother's eye, first remove the plank out of your own, right? Once that's happened though, once you've experienced victory in the mockery thing, then all of a sudden you'll see clearly to help your brother let go of mockery as well, right? So yeah, we want to sort our own home before we start telling other people how they need to clean their houses, if you will, right? Anyway, so there are all kinds of examples of ways that boundaries would show up. You guys, again, that boundary was not to protect me from my friend. It was not to punish him. It was not to separate us. The boundary was there to protect my environment and his choices and his influence in my life to the degree that he was actually willing to take responsibility for. And I had given him multiple conversations to represent himself and for us to reason together and negotiate this. And he kept saying with his mouth, I care about you, I respect you, I appreciate you saying this, I want this to be different. And he kept demonstrating with his choices and his actions that he did not care. And it was awkward because I'm literally in the room with him watching him do the thing that we had already talked about multiple times. This wasn't a one-time thing. I had many conversations with him. I have so much, not me, the Lord has so much grace for people, and he continues to reach for them and lead them and guide them and invite them when they willfully choose to resist his invitation and they don't want it. He doesn't force it on them. He allows them to choose evil. There are some of us who are codependent, who will not let people on the other end of our relationship choose evil. We will hustle and manipulate and control our way to protecting them from Satan when all the while our choices are motivated by Satan. You know what I mean? Which is crazy. And so for me, there was a reorienting process for sure when I had to learn how to release people to their choices and not take responsibility for what they were doing or try and get them to do stuff for me or for them. I had to let them go to their choices and let that be what they sat in. And then limit our interactions to whatever was appropriate to set them up for success to meet me. So when we talk about the subject of trust, if someone violates you, I'm going to put air quotes on this because I don't talk like this anymore. I've removed this from my vocabulary because this supports and perpetuates a system and a mindset that's actually at war with the kingdom of heaven. When someone breaks your trust, and it's hard for me to say that because of how barbaric it is. When someone breaks your trust, we all of a sudden then have to push them away. People push them away. They retract, they withhold, they hide. They no longer allow themselves to be vulnerable or expressive to that person. They don't get access to them anymore. They don't do a one-on-one thing anymore. Things change, right? And they might not even be trying to punish the person. They might just be self-protecting. But even then, it's still evil. Why? Because love doesn't do that. Love always protects. Not itself. Love protects the beloved, right? When we seek to hide and hold back because I'm afraid of you, we have us in mind. We are not listening to love anymore. Love is not violating. Love doesn't just let us be a doormat. Boundaries are appropriate. But again, the heart, the motive behind it is, how can I set this other person up for success in the capacity of a relationship they can succeed in with me? That is the spirit behind it. We've got a couple comments. What would you suggest for someone who has had a super similar situation to this with a family member, but they don't want to receive feedback? Okay, so Amelia, I'm going to tell you, the amount of interaction you have with this person is up to you. You don't owe them time. You don't have to be around them. You can choose to pull away, to reduce the amount of exposure you have to them, to how much you participate. You can control your participation in their environment. You have control over you, right? So if they don't want to receive feedback, if they don't want to hear what you have to say, if they don't care about how their behavior is negatively affecting you, guess what? I'm going to say this with all affection I can afford. They don't care about you. That sounds harsh, I know. But when push comes to shove, if their behavior and their comfortability is more important than how their choices affect you, then you are not a priority. They're the priority. And if that's how they run their life, you shouldn't be expecting them to respond to feedback, to listen to love. Their actions and choices are demonstrating to you they're not listening to love. And so you reduce your expectations to something a little less involved, a little less demanding. Okay, they're not going to follow love. How can I connect with them? In what ways could I limit my interactions with them where I can still have a relationship, but it's going to be at the interval or at the exposure, at the intensity that we can both succeed here, that I'm not going to get run over or destroyed or violated, but I can still have a relationship with them. And if that means we see each other twice a year, because that's the best we can come up with, then we settle there. But when I see them, I am hopeful and I'm excited and invitational, and I'm limiting in how much we get to interact. Not because I'm controlling them, not because I'm trying to be punishy or exact my will, but because I want to find what is the measurement and intensity in our connection that they can succeed in relating to me appropriately. I hope that answers your question. All right, next question. I have a question. As someone wanting to grow in discernment, how do you personally recognize the different influences? Is it something you just ask Holy Spirit? How do you recognize these things? Is it Annalisa? I'm going to say to you, this talk is on trust. You're asking about discernment. I'm going to send you to mikemyershow.com/course. I have a Discerning Spirits course. It's 7 weeks. It's like 9, almost 10 hours of teaching. That is my best answer to that question. Your question is loaded. Or the Numa School of Spiritual Intelligence comes up this next Thursday, July 11th. You can go to mikemyershow.com to register for that, to either live stream or attend in person in Reading. Those are the best answers I can give you. I want to stay on the subject of trust in this feed. If you want to talk about discernment, come to the school or take my online course. There you go. All right. Okay. So let's look at the other questions we had. Sorry, I'm getting kind of lost. Doesn't dishonesty break the connection and need reparation? Like if someone lies to us, doesn't that mean then that they need to fix it? That's a good question, don't you think? If someone breaks your trust because they've lied to you, right? Again, I'm putting air quotes on that because that's not what happened. If someone lies to you, yes, it hurts. Yes, it's not fun. Oh my gosh, that was painful. I've found in me, when I discovered someone lied to me, I used to want to punish those people. I used to want to shove them away. I used to want to just be done. But as I've continued to walk with the Lord, I've found that love, in response to recognizing that someone actually lied to me, actually moves toward them. And so then I invite them into a conversation. I'm like, hey, you told me this. I found out this. So this is in direct contradiction to what you told me. So it seems to me like you lied here. Is that true? And again, like the reason I'm asking is not so I can punish them, so I can prove that they're guilty and I get to condemn them now. It's, I want to first confirm, did you actually lie to me, or do I not have all the information? I want to seek an understanding, right? Yes, I lied. Maybe they lie again and they say they didn't lie, or they didn't say that. They try and change their story. Or let's say in a better case scenario, they're like, I'm sorry, you're right, I did lie. It's awful, I should have done that, I'm so sorry. Okay, and then my next question is, okay, why did you feel like you needed to lie about this? What were you afraid of? What were you trying to accomplish? What were you trying to avoid? Like, what was going on? And again, still seeking understanding. And then they're going to share their part of the story. What they say to me is not going to justify them lying to me. And I'm not looking for a way to excuse them from their behavior. But what I am experiencing love doing in response to the person who lied to me is, I want to figure out, why did this make sense to them in the first place? When did this become a good idea in our relationship? Is there something I'm doing? Are they afraid of me? Have I demonstrated something that made them feel like being honest with me isn't safe and so they had to go somewhere else? I'm not trying to make it my fault. I'm legitimately trying to understand what was the driver to get them to the place where they lied. Are they just twisted? Are they just a liar? Do they just like not have a value for a relationship? Do they not care about me? Or are there other reasons going on here? Love is seeking to cover that, right? Seeking to maintain connection here, to reconcile, to be able to have a relationship to whatever degree this person is capable of succeeding at, not punishing them. And so moving forward, love is not like, okay, you lied to me, now you don't get to do this stuff anymore. Now I'm never going to trust you again. That's not how this works. Love actually gives me the ability to seek out understanding and still stay in a heart posture of trust toward this person and not be paranoid and suspicious every time they contribute after we've had that conversation. Love is still for them and still believes in their ability to choose good. Okay? Let me see some couple of comments here. Atsuko says, it's true, they don't care about you is the conclusion I have reached no matter how much they say they care. No, not aware of their willful choice. How to help those people become aware is my question. How do we help people become aware? Atsuko, the answer is boundaries with consequences. Meaning, they only get access to the degree that they can demonstrate they're successful in our relationship. Whatever beyond that they should be able to enjoy with us, but can't because they don't take responsibility or ownership of their influence in the relationship, they don't get to have it. Not out of punishment, but out of protection for what they've demonstrated they can handle in both of us being free, respected people in this relationship. If they care enough, the lack of what they don't get to have, what they miss, what they long for, might be motivation enough to wake up the willpower and the resolve to be willing to change their behavior. We don't do it to get them to do that. We let their own process work itself out. And oftentimes, more often than not, people who actually care about you recognize the boundary you'd set up and seek for a way to win in your environment. Okay, what do I need to change? How can I fix this? How can I make it better? And then they adjust, not performance, but their priority in how they manage themselves around you. And from that place then, you get to successfully increase the access they have to your life, and it rewards the way they're orienting themselves in your connections. Trust is a spirit, which means trust doesn't dictate what you're allowed to do or what you're not allowed to do. Like some people think, well, then if I'm always trusting everyone, then I'm just going to let anything happen all the time, which isn't true. Thank you. Trust doesn't mean you just let anything happen. Trust doesn't mean there are no boundaries. Trust doesn't mean you're just a doormat and people get to walk all over you all the time. That's not true. When Jesus says, if someone strikes you on the cheek, turn to them the other one, right? If someone steals your jacket, give them your coat, your tunic, your undergarments as well. If someone forces you to go with them a mile, go with them another mile. What is Jesus saying? He's not saying, do the opposite of what they're trying to get you to do so that you can break what they're doing. That's not the point. Jesus is saying that love is not trying to control what the other person is doing. Love is actually so much more abundant and giving in that exchange than the predator or the oppressor or the villain, right? Love has so much more to give than any villain could ever take. And so if we could give ourselves to that economy, if we could wake up to the abundance, the steadfast, loving kindness of God residing right here in our being, if we could learn to say yes to that in response to our friends who betray us, to our enemies, to the randos we don't even know. Like if we could let the Lord be where that comes from, if we could come from the Lord in that place, then all of a sudden, it's not just, oh, I gotta control everything, I gotta stop stuff, I gotta protect myself, I gotta whatever. It's not those things. It's, wow, there's actually so much more freedom on my end in responding to chaos, in responding to dysfunction, in responding to selfishness and whatever. And so then I get to choose how I want to demonstrate the trusting nature of the Lord in response to what that other person is capable of in our relationship. I'm going to seek understanding. I'm going to invite them into a place where we can reason together. You guys, reasoning together is a big practice of the Lord. He doesn't just make decisions without you. He doesn't just tell you what to do, whether you care about it or not. He's not asking for your permission to be who he is. But he's also not just telling you how to live your life. He reasons with you. Meaning, he has a design, an intention for what you're supposed to be and do in your life. That's true. But he also regards your heart, your emotions, your thoughts, your desires. Like he cares about that because he cares about you. And so he'll meet you where you're at and not just demand obedience no matter what you think or how you feel. He meets you there and seeks understanding and invites you into a place where you get to represent yourself and expose how you feel. And when evil pops out of your emotions, like, oh my gosh, That's why I want to be there. And he's like, yeah, it's okay. You want to let that go? You're like, yeah, I'm sorry. And we repent, right? And we get to change and we get to walk with him. And in his kindness, the repentance comes out. It's not from his tyrannical oppression and his dictatorial commandments to us. It's in the kindness of the Lord that allows us to shift how we live and what we choose. It's in his trusting nature, you guys, that we are empowered. And so in the same way, we want to be able to give that to other people. It doesn't come out of our willpower. The trust we give that releases grace to the people in our relationships comes from the nature of the Lord expressing itself through our faith, through our yes to God in us, in our own lives. It's a living death. We stop trying to uphold this persona of this person we think we're supposed to be, and we start saying yes to that river of living water that is expressing itself in our affections, in our desires, in our priorities, and we find ways to demonstrate that in our schedule, in our work life, in our relationships, in all the things. We acknowledge him and he directs us, right? And there's this beautiful oneness. He doesn't replace us. We get to be us together, and we express love and trust through our personality, through our humor, through our intimacy, through our connections, and it demonstrates this beautiful invitation to life and abundance and safety and respect and hope, and it's beautiful and it's messy. There are things we have to work through. There's our own reactions that we have to submit to the Lord. We don't have to, that we get to. And as we learn to walk with him in this place, you guys, the transformative power of Jesus makes us something more than we were. It changes us. You guys, he will change you. We are not stuck being untrusting. We are not stuck being paranoid. And even if you were abused and victimized, and again, this talk is not about that, but the power of the blood of Jesus changes what happened to you. And if we let him be the source and the narrative of what we are and who we are and how we're meant to participate, anything that happened becomes overwhelmed by the love of God. Legit. Without his love, you can't do anything I'm talking about here. But when the love of the Lord flows through you, this is how we are meant to live. We are a trusting people. We are not naive. We are not ignorant. We are aware. We are intentional. We are discerning. And in that place of empowerment and awareness and knowledge, we still come in a spirit of gentleness, of humility, of trust. Okay, we got another comment? Mike, you think when we have the right boundaries in our lives, we can get fully transparent with the other ones around us? Yes, absolutely. I would say that if you'd spent a week around me, you would see that I'm pretty transparent. I don't have a ton of things that I'm trying to hide or manage for other people. I say things and the people around me have to adjust. They have to figure out how do they respond to someone, so expressive and forthcoming in his opinions and whatever. And it's not because I need everyone to think what I'm thinking about and change what they think. It's that I'm living pretty transparently. I'm living in the light, and I've learned how to be acclimated to this vulnerability and this exposure. A lot of us are allergic to the light because we're so afraid of what's outside of our control. I've given up a lot of that. Am I saying that I don't ever want to control anything ever? No, that still shows up sometimes. But by and large, I've learned, in a pretty practical sense, how to live in a vulnerable state with the people around me. And it's pretty easy and simple to recognize pretty early on when someone is not going to be able to handle that with me. And so then boundaries come into play to set them up for success so they can learn to engage with me in a way that they can win and that I get to win too. I don't just lose all the time, right? I get to win in how they choose to respond to who I am in that relationship as well. But I get to have confidence in that because it's not coming from, I need my agenda to be met because I'm trying to get you to be something for me or because I have to have something in our relationship. It's not that. It's because I've learned that me giving up the respect that I deserve so that you can feel comfortable being yourself around me is not love. That's self-deprecating. It actually causes both of us to fail in this, and I will resent our relationship. And I care more about our connection to represent that I don't like that thing early on, so you can adjust if you want, or you can demonstrate you don't actually care about me, and then I'm not going to expect you to later down the road, right? We get to be on the same page right away. Okay, Annalisa says, would you say there's a difference between vulnerability and transparency, or are they the same thing? Oh, for sure there's a difference. Transparency is, here's what's going on, I don't care if you know or not, I'm just going to tell you, I'm not going to hide it. Vulnerability is, oh my gosh, here's what's happening, and you could hurt me with this information. You could hurt me because you know this, right? Vulnerability comes, the spirit of it, the heart behind it is going to be, I'm exposed toward you in a way that I willfully chose. Transparency is, I can talk about a subject or an idea that sounds vulnerable, but it's not actually unsafe for me to share it. Actually, whether you like it or not, I'm pretty much fine anyway, right? And so I did say transparency. I do walk in vulnerability with people that I have intimacy with. I walk in transparency in general, probably to a greater degree than what I see as average or common around me. because I just feel more comfortable in that space. I've learned to navigate those places in my life and realize like there's no shame here. I'm not embarrassed by this. I'm not responsible for this. I don't need to control what you think about this. So I can share it freely, and whatever you do is not my responsibility and not something that I need to try and manage. And so that allows us to live in a transparency. The vulnerability piece, I would say, belongs to the people that you've chosen to be intimate with, and that you're actually like walking in intentional partnership toward each other in an affectionate, intimate place. Okay, hope that answers that question. What is Valerie doing? Says to clarify. Sometimes when is this the intercessory one? Let's see. When I want to intercede for someone, when I want to intercede for someone, I have a fear that I'm agreeing with the spirit of manipulation and intolerance rather than trust. Okay, good. There we go. That's helpful. So Valerie, in that state, if you're going to intercede for someone, you want to pay attention to why. If you're interceding because you're reacting to something that they did you don't like, I would say you're being a coward by interceding. Go have a conversation with them. Leave your offering at the altar and go be made right with your brother or sister. Expose to them how they've offended you, how they've wronged you. This is biblical. Go have the conversation. Don't pray for them. Go talk to them. Following the Lord, okay? I'm not saying just go talk to everyone about everything. But if they've hurt you and something's off, go have a conversation. If you don't have that place in their life, then by all means, pray about it, you know? But yeah, we can definitely tap into witchcraft by praying for people because we're trying to change how they do stuff. That's not how the Lord works. He never inspires us to change people. That's love's job, not ours. Okay, so hopefully that clarifies it. Kathy says, what do you do when you tell your boundary and they keep crossing or not honor it or manipulate? What core value you have and tell that it's not okay and they keep challenging it? A core value you have and tell that it's not okay. Okay, so Kathy, my answer to you, what do you do if they keep violating your boundary? Then you keep reducing the access they have to your exchanges to the point where they can succeed. Meaning, like, let's say, as an example, let's say you carpool with somebody and you go pick them up, but every time you guys go to work together in the morning, right? But for the last 12 days you pick them up, they've been late getting out of their house, and they make both of you late clocking in, which makes you both look bad. It causes you to not get to be faithful with what you told your boss you were going to deliver, and so you're getting kind of screwed over in your ability to succeed in your job. In that space, you have conversations, you chatted 5 times, and they keep not being late, or not being ready. Then the conversation is going to sound something like this. Hey Jane, I've noticed for the last couple of weeks that you're not ready when I arrive. Here's my plan. I want you to know what I'm going to do. You can do whatever you want. I'm not going to tell you how you have to live, but I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, okay? So you're not surprised. Tomorrow, when I show up, I'm going to come at 7:50. If you're not ready and out the door and at the sidewalk by 7:50, I'm going to keep going because it means you're not ready. So what I want from you is I want you to be out here before I arrive by 7:50. If you're not on the street, I'm just going to keep going because I don't want to be late anymore. Let me know if you have any questions about that. But if tomorrow you come out at 7:52 and I'm not here, know that I'm not going to be here. I'm not coming because I'll be on the way to work. If you want to ride with me, be out before 7:50 and I'll happily pick you up. If you're not out here, I'm just going to keep going. Does that feel unfair? What are your thoughts on that? And they get to chime in. But the reality is, hey, me having this priority and this expectation of you is not unfair. It's not unjust. I'm not trying to ruin your life. I'm actually trying to set both of us up for success. If you don't want success, that's okay. It just means you and I have different goals. In which case, my resources are going towards success, not sabotage. And if that's what you want to choose, you are free to do it. And I'm not going to condemn you for that. I'm just going to govern myself accordingly. You know what I mean? And so it's just a silly example, but that's how that would go. If they violate your boundary, then the consequence comes into play. Hey, here's what I'm going to do. You don't like it? It's okay. If you want this to work well for us, I'm going to need you to do this. If you don't want to do it, that's okay. It's just then we should not be doing this thing. Right? That's hopefully that answers the question. All right, you guys, we've been going for a while now. I'm going to wrap this up. But at the end of the day, you guys, the point of this is trust is a spirit, not some resource or commodity that you manage and that you reward or punish people with. It's something you generously, as a gift, get to give away according to the nature of the Lord in your life and your relationships. It's beautiful, it's powerful. Yes, there's a reorientation that will need to take place if you're in any way cultured by American culture, but you're going to have to reorient the way you think about and practice the subject of trust in your relationships. Most of us are untrusting, and we throw the word trust on things that have nothing to do with actual trust, which is confusing for us. So we want to submit ourselves to the nature of love, which will teach us how to actually trust people, and then practicality, function, skill set will develop from experience and adherence to wisdom, okay? Last thing, so how do you get to be more transparent with people around you? Sorry, I think you already explained that, but I missed it. Yeah, I did. Did I answer that? Kind of. I'm going to say go back on this because I got to end this. So I'm sorry, I don't have time to answer that, but just watch it again. One thing I do want to throw out there, you guys, though, just those of you who are paying attention, who are aware of my world, we have the Numa School of Spiritual Intelligence this next week. So July 11th to the 13th. That's this next Thursday. If you have not registered, we still have a few spots open. You can go to mikemyershow.com/summer school or go to my website and find the event there. You can either live stream or attend in person. If you attend in person, there's some fun perks you get to experience at the event itself. I'm so excited for this event, you guys. I'm currently still putting together the curriculum and the slides that I'm using for my teaching times. This is going to be so much fun. It's going to be so revelatory and illuminating and going to be so equipping for us to walk in maturity and competency in navigating the spirit realm. I'm so excited for what we're going to get to experience together with this and how people are going to be impacted by this school. If you're not registered, repent and register. Like, do yourself a favor, get on this. This is brand new stuff, you guys, in terms of how it's going to be presented and articulated. The subject of spiritual intelligence and discernment is not new. It's actually ancient. The Lord has been doing this for a long time. But what does it look like to participate and engage with this stuff now in 2019? That's exactly what this is about. Why would you not? I mean, if you cared about this conversation with trust, oh my God, you're going to love this school. So join us for that. If you guys have any other questions or whatever, please put them in the comments below. We may at some point answer them later. I'm not promising that, but I do pay attention to what you guys are saying on these things. So please feel free to represent yourself there. Thanks so much, man. That was so good. Thank you. You're welcome, you guys. Thanks for chiming in, joining us. Those of you watching this later, thanks for watching. Hope that makes sense, and have a great rest of your day.
We're off.
Huh.